Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Other Minds and Hands. This is episode number 114. Maggie and I are back after a little travel hiatus and such. But we want to do, before we get back, we are working our way back towards our Pride and Prejudice project here. But first, we have a fun opportunity to have a discussion of another Tolkien, a completely different Tolkien adaptation. And this is something, Maggie, this is a conversation I've wanted to have with you for a while, because what we're going to be talking about is looking at painting. Actually, so we're looking at
Which we've never done. I feel
still
like this is
visual art,
really
right? We
cool.
kind of touched on it when we in our conversation with John Howe, right?
Howe.
In the context of looking, discussing his work in Rings of Power and in the films, but
But that was also very different because it was such a production focused thing. Like that
yes,
concept art was for a
right,
purpose of
right,
becoming a visual.
exactly,
So
exactly,
yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah,
think I think Miriam's work is such a lovely, fresh, different way to look at adaptation. This will be fun. But anyway, I'll
yes.
let you keep introducing.
No,
Sorry.
absolutely. So yes, it's the work of Miriam Ellis, who is a wonderful painter. Miriam Ellis has, some of you might have seen some of her work. She has presented at various of our Signum Moots before. She presented at Myth Moot this past year. She just presented at Cascade Moot a couple months ago. Where we had a little conversation about this, and the conversation I was having with Miriam there really kind of inspired me to say, "Hey, let's do this." So, again, conceptually, big picture. Of course, a painting is is an adaptation as well. And Maggie, the reason I've been so interested to have a conversation like this with you, to sit down with a painting and do some analysis of the painting as adaptation, is, of course, on the one hand, there's so much overlap, right, with the kind of visual analysis that we do of, except films are visual adaptations, paintings are visual adaptations, but of course it's a different thing, right? You have to speak a different language because you have one frame, right? You only have one
Right.
image with which to try to capture a lot, right? So you're using a lot of the same language in some ways, right, that you would in film. But in other ways, the vocabulary is quite different because, again, it's one single frame in which you're trying to capture, perhaps even in some ways, an entire narrative,
Yeah.
character. There's all kinds of things going on that you need
That's what
to
I think.
have happen.
That's what I think is going to be so interesting, though, because so often we're talking about camera angle, lighting,
Hmm.
movement. Like where there's no reason we can talk about all of
Yeah, that's
that
all
in a single
relevant.
frame except movement. But like
Right.
even that, like sometimes paintings do have movement because you can tell where things are shifting. So
Yes.
I
And
think
it'll
looking at a
take your eye in particular
right.
directions when you look at it. Yeah, yeah,
So I feel like
absolutely.
taking a look at a painting or a single frame of a film, like it is a really good exercise to just see how this is constructed. So I
Yeah.
think this would be really cool.
Yeah, and of course the context of it is quite different because you are uh, because you know that you just the one frame is the whole thing, right? So it's not like sometimes we'll do a freeze frame and we'll like, let's look at this shot and let's think about what's going on there and everything, right? And that's all relevant, but of
Hmm.
course we have to understand that that shot is one of that frame is one of thousands and thousands of
If
frames,
not
right?
millions,
Right, if not
yeah.
millions of frames that are created in order to be combined with all of the other ones in order to form the complete adaptation. This is the whole thing. So anyway, so in that way, really different framework for the adaptation, and yet the question of like, what is the artist attempting to achieve? How is the
Hmm.
artist relating to the original work? What
And what
kind?
are we inferring as two separate audience members, and how do you kind of manage that
Yeah.
interpretation? And yeah,
Absolutely. And Miriam herself is here. She just said hi there on YouTube. So we've got
oh,
Miriam on YouTube.
wait, should I
Who's
be switching
so
over to YouTube? I was watching
you could
Twitch.
you could it looks like she's on YouTube right now. So that would be
Okay, I'll switch
that'd be
over
good if
there.
you'd be able to see that. But and anyway, yeah. So Miriam, so glad you could join us today. I know you're here in text interface today. So if we we can get the opportunity to sort of ask Miriam some questions and maybe think about things as we move forward here. But Miriam has also prepared for us a video wherein she spotlights a couple of her paintings that I'm really interested to discuss. So these are the examples we're going to be looking at. So first we're going to hear Miriam introducing herself and her work, and then talking about doing analysis of the paintings herself. I love to hear Miriam doing analysis of her painting, and then Maggie, you and I will get a chance to kind of go through, and we can look at the images and do some of our own discussion, and Miriam can pipe in here as well. And yes, yeah, you're logged into YouTube as Rings and Realms.
As Rings and Realms, yes.
Okay, yes.
Yes. I didn't know how I was logged in until I posted that. And I was like, oh.
That often happens to me too.
I can tell you why, though, because I was getting all the episodes for season 2 to put on the Collaboratory. So if anybody
nice.
wants to marathon season 2 of Rings and Realms, it's going to go on Collaboratory in the next week.
Yeah, so you can see it there ad free, like YouTube ad free. So
exactly.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Anyway, cool. Hi, Miriam.
Awesome. All right, so I'm gonna start up the video. So I'm gonna put our little images aside here.
Me here, and I'm gonna watch you there.
Okay, very good. And I'm gonna start the video. Video starts with an image of Miriam's book, The Art of Mercy in Middle-earth, painting inspired by Tolkien's Legendarium. So here is Miriam.
Hello, Corey and Maggie and friends. Thank you so much for the chance to spend a little time with you looking at a couple of my paintings today. For folks who don't know me, I'm Miriam Ellis. I'm the author of The Art of Mercy in Middle-earth, which was brought out this year by Professor Tom Shippey's publishing house, Uppsala Books. It's a book of my paintings and essays inspired by Tolkien's Legendarium. And I recently was at Cascade Moot presenting, and Corey, you remarked that you wished you could slow down my slides and look at a couple of my pictures in detail. So it's great to have the chance to do that with you today. I'm starting with this piece, which is called Lobelia Rescued from the Lock Holes. It's commemorating that triumphant and very poignant moment at the end of the Scouring of the Shire, in which Frodo is on hand to rescue his old familial foe. You can see in the sky that there is a sense of darkness passing away in the Shire. The local hobbits have endured a terrible time of being colonized, mistreated, bullied, robbed of their harvest, and of all the carefree, lovely, kindly things that they love. Even to get to come out of their smiles and homes in freedom here is a kind of celebration. And Lobelia, who had the courage to face down the ruffians with her umbrella, has become a kind of folk hero during her imprisonment, unbeknownst to her. You can see how frail she is after such mistreatment in such a lonely and darksome hole, and how surprised and touched she is to be presented with a bouquet of the season's last wildflowers by a little hobbit lass. You can see the child has a wreath of flowers in her hair. It's a token of being safe again, to come out and pick wildflowers and to walk about with a celebratory air in public. Her mother and auntie applaud, as do others in this extemporaneous gathering and rescue mission. Food means so much to the hobbits. Hobbiton, for example, is centered on the grange and the mill for the creation of flour. And here a woman has come running from her house in Mitchell Delving with loaves of bread for the prisoners. It's probably coarse bread because of the way the ruffians have been seizing foodstuffs, but this compassionate hobbit is sharing what little she has, just as the Cottons do in making sure that the gaffer has something to eat during the occupation. We also catch a glimpse here of the art of hobbit bowing, which we hear so much about at the beginning of The Hobbit. Perhaps this elder hobbit knew Lobelia in their shared youth, and he's bowing to show how he honors her and her courage. Lobelia is rather bedraggled after her ghastly experiences, but Her class station is hinted at here by the fine quality of her yellow shawl, her exceedingly elegant umbrella, and the very intricate embroidery of lobelia flowers on her garments. She's been the bane of the Bag and Baggins' existence. I think it's funny that Bilbo is hired as a burglar by Thorin and Company, but it's actually this little lady who has been suspected of stealing silver. On a more serious note, there's a triple escape going on in this scene. Frodo has escaped from his dread quest, alive, if not unscathed. You can see him wearing Arwen's star around his neck here, and there are tokens of his journey, like the Lothlorien cloak and brooch. He's present, I think, by the workings of Eru to help Lobelia escape from this imprisonment. In a sense, Lobelia and Frodo escape together in this scene from the snares of old family grudges. His face is full of pity and tenderness for his aged relation. He's really been studying under Gandalf, I think. But the most moving escape is the one that Lobelia makes on her own. In the last days of her life, she rescues herself from a life misspent in envy and bitterness by donating all of her wealth to help rehouse hobbits who have been made homeless by the invaders. She changes her legacy. She undertakes the core Tolkien road of giving things up to become free, just as Bilbo gives up the Arkenstone and his fair share of the treasure and Diane's necklace and eventually the ring. Tom Bombadil tells Frodo that his hand is fairer without the ring, and he breaks the Barrow spell by casting its hoard of treasure on the grass, free to all finders. By giving up Bag End and all her worldly riches, generosity turns the strong character of Lobelia into someone I think would have remained a folk hero for many Hobbit generations. You can see how the tall November weeds have grown up in neglect around the lock holes, which were once storage places for general community benefit. I made mine look like a root cellar, thinking of Hobbit's fondness for tasty root vegetables. Amid the weeds on the roof of the delving are dead thistles. They hint at what Lobelia is leaving behind, her strong but prickly former self, as she steps out into the light of an even stronger self, capable of great empathy for her neighbors. I'd like you to pay special attention to the little hobbit lad and lass on the roof. They are witnesses to all that is happening in the Shire in the last years of the Third Age of Men. They've experienced the anguish of their society during hardship. And of course, the impression would be quite a lasting one, I'm assuming, since these little ones are in their formative years. They are also eyewitnesses to the rescue of Lobelia and all of their society from domination. So if you take a last look here at them, you can hop forward with me 40 years. Here we are in 1460 in the Shire reckoning. Those little ones are now this young married couple, and they've come with flowers to the Battle of Bywater Stone, which quietly commemorates the 19 hobbits who fell in that affray. To orient yourself to the hillside location of this monument, you can see the 3 farthing stone to the south beyond the Great East Road. The husband has one arm gently around his wife as he looks at the stone with a mixture of pride in the courage of the hobbit warriors of old and a wistful reflection that such things should ever have happened in his early youth. The wife's expression is tender and sad. Perhaps some of her relatives were among the fallen. In the background, an 80-year-old Sam Gamgee is tending the monument garden. The pair of cypress trees here are a token of Bag End botanical tastes, reflecting the dooryard trees that Bilbo cultivated and loved. There is a sense of the passage of time here with the former children now in their 40s and Sam getting on in years, though he is still quite agile as a gardener. But more than merely capturing a seldom glimpsed place in the Shire or a page from Hobbit history, this painting is a kind of wreath I am laying in memory of Tolkien's experiences in the Great War, in which he lost all but one of his young friends. The red poppies commemorate that loss, and they're mixed in with the white umbellifers, which are my symbol of Edith Bratt Tolkien, who once danced among such flowers and who was part of those generations of women who had to endure the horrors of war. I hoped to show the smallness of hobbits here in the landscape standing in front of this great stone. Even if big folk are generally a foot or two taller than hobbits, we are all only little beings on the earth. None of us is suited to war. Even if we have hobbit resiliency, we are not fitted for the unnaturalness of purpose domination, I think. Frodo was unable to recover in Middle Earth from it, and Professor Tolkien used the whole grand great space of the Lord of the Rings to tell that tale and perhaps to process all that he had been through himself. In the figure of Sam here, we see something of what I believe most gentlefolk truly desire: a green and abundant countryside, sun and wind and rain, quiet labors and times of rest and peace. The hobbits deserve all this, and I think all people do. Thank you for listening, everybody. Thank you, Corey and Maggie. I hope this was interesting for the community.
I'm waiting now for Maggie to catch up. We're not watching it synced up together. Are you all set?
Yes, it
Okay.
just thanked Corey and Maggie, so I assume that's the end.
That is the end. Yeah, that is the end. Yeah.
Thank you, Miriam. What a joy. That was such a whirlwind, though. So I hope we're able to scrub
Yeah,
back a bit to
we're
our
gonna
narrative.
we're gonna look backwards here, and definitely see
Wow.
if we can stop at a few places. Um, I want to focus on the two images we got. She gave us a bunch of bonus images here, which we could also look at, but I'm going to resist the temptation to do that and instead focus on these two images. Now, the first thing that I would emphasize here is thinking about these two works as adaptations, right? And I think these are fascinating choices. Longtime Other Minds and Hands viewers will remember, I've been kind of breaking down adaptations into different categories since very early on, right? There are many paintings are direct adaptations. Like, I want to illustrate a scene that is described in the
Yeah,
text.
like we want the exact moment of the Balrog and Gandalf, coming to heads. Like, we have those precise images in our minds.
Yes. And then there are some adaptations that are fill in the gaps adaptations, where you are situating the adaptation within a world or even within a particular story, but you're describing something that is not, in fact, described in the book. So it's not just taking something in words and trying to make it into a picture, but you're taking the story, the characters, the whole concept, and you are trying to do something that fits there, but it isn't something that is being described. And
So that is kind of, and we've talked about that in fan fiction. Like, it is a fictional creation because there isn't a textual paragraph for it,
yes,
but it's not the same as like an alternate universe or anything because it fits within the world. We know this happened. We just don't know how, or it's not described.
Yes.
So taking
Yes.
that kind of, I would call that a loose adaptation, right? So like you're taking that kind of opportunity to fill in the gap with things that you know probably happened, but you're the one that gets to decide how.
Yeah, and you, yeah, because there is no, for any fill in the gaps adaptation. Well, okay, I won't say no. There is a very limited, like, warrant that you are given by the text, by the authority of the text itself, the primary text, because by definition, this thing was not described. It was not part of the story that we've been given, and so it is. Any fill in the blank situation is like a sort of a cooperative situation where you have the creative imagination of the artist, the adapter, right, coming together with the creative mind of the original author. Now, that same transaction is happening even when you're depicting a scene that's there. We've talked recently, like when we were doing the what do you call it, storyboarding exercise, right? How many decisions have to be made even when you are trying to, so there are all these things that you're making up that you are putting your own creative approach to what to say and how to say it in order to try to, even if what you're trying to convey is exactly what's in the book or what you get from the book, right?
Yeah, I mean, the text from a book is not painting a picture. We
No.
don't know exactly where the chair is placed and where the light is coming from and how long the pauses are between words. And it still took us that long to do one frame of a storyboard.
Right. Exactly. So anyway, so these two choices. So this choice, the remembrance of the Battle of Bywater, and then I'm trying to get to the whole picture. Here we go. The lobelia released from the lock holes. Both of these are to some extent fill in the blanks. The lobelia released from the lock holes is at least a story that is alluded to in The Return of the King. We are told that this happens, and we're told a few things about, if not the day, like for instance, we don't know that there was a person who came to give her bread. We don't know that she was offered wildflower. Like, those are all details that are just the story that it's like it happens in like one sentence or two sentences in the book. So we get very little narrative actually describing the event. By the way, Maggie, I just have to say this because it's going to distract me until we do. I don't know if it strikes you as much as it does me, but the Hobbit lass up on top of the hill looks exactly like Hazel, and I can't get over it.
Oh, I kind of agree. Oh, I'm gonna have to go back to that bit of the video where she zooms in because I'm looking at Miriam's website to look at that print, and you're not able to zoom into that
Right.
fine level. But guys, she looks just like my kid.
Yeah, exactly. That Hobbit lass looks a lot like, which I think more than anything, Maggie, just sort of shows that your daughter Hazel is like obviously like destined to be a perfect Hobbit child extra,
I mean, we
right?
know
I mean,
she's
like,
of Hobbit ilk. Like, we are very
like
much
that's
Hobbit people.
it just
And my
yeah.
mom did make her a Hobbit costume when she was 1 year old, so I've got some pretty cute ringlet Hobbit baby pictures I can share. But yeah, thanks for pointing. That's not where I thought you were gonna go. I thought we were
Sorry,
like,
I
I
s-
have to talk
that's
about I have to talk about the light before anything
no,
else.
no,
So
yeah, we'll
I
definitely
want you
talk
to
about
get to
that. We'll
that.
definitely talk about that. I just want to get that off my chest because that's
Appreciate
been
that.
distracting me.
Any opportunity to hear that my child is a Hobbit, I am 100% on board.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, but thinking back again to the sort of the adaptation situation of these, right? Again,
Like, while you do that, you know I'm going to be pulling up a picture of Hazel, which is like a
pictures
Hobbit,
of
so I can share
Hazel,
it with everybody.
yes.
You go ahead.
So again, this is a scene that we know happens. And so in that sense, this is a direct adaptation. But it's also, even to depict it in any kind of detail is necessarily a fill in the blanks, right? The second image, no, I didn't hit it. This one.
There you go.
There we go. There's the picture of Maggie's Hobbit lass.
Hobbit
Okay,
child.
there it is.
All right, now I can carry on.
Okay. This one is much more fully fill in the blanks, as it in fact depicts an incident that is decades in the future of the end of the Return of the King. Right? It doesn't mean that there's no basis in the text, right? We know that this remembrance stone was set up, on the place where the battle happened. we, you know, there's it has its roots in the text, as do, you know, all, to some extent or other, all fill in the blanks adaptations do. And yet again, it's not depicting a thing that is actually from the text. So both of them have that fill in the blanks sense. And that, I think, is a really interesting, it makes these choices particularly interesting, because rather than, it challenges me, rather than, you know, just like going like, let's pull up the passage where this thing is described and, you know, go back and forth and look at the comparison of the details that Tolkien gives us, and, you know, their inclusion or non-inclusion or alteration or whatever in the adaptation. This, I think, by the way, this is one of the reasons I actually find fill in the blanks adaptations both, I find them more restful they feel lower pressure to me, because I'm not sitting there saying like, oh, that's wrong. I mean, you can still say that they're wrong in certain ways, like it, you know, it breaks the lore, right, is what they say, you know, in various things. But anyway, I there isn't that pressure to compare and contrast. Like when I'm looking at a depiction of a text I know well, I can't get the text out of my head. Like I've got the text, like I've got my memory of the text running in my head. Maybe my memory is accurate, maybe not, but I've got it running in my head. Yeah. And I can't get that. I can't like break free and just kind of get into the adaptation on its own ground as much. It takes much more discipline for me to set it aside.
Well, first of all, I don't think any of us are surprised that you have the text absolutely in the forefront of your mind. So that's fine.
Yeah.
But I think you're absolutely right. And I think lower pressure is such a great expression for it, because that's you personally, but I feel like we'd all probably understand that, because we're not trying to mimic something that exists elsewhere. So you're automatically taking that pressure off, which I think is probably the overarching pressure of any adaptation, is that even if you're trying to make your own thing, you personally as a creator, as a director, as an art director, are not trying to encapsulate what happened in the text. You are still under that kind of assumption from other people, and therefore that pressure. So yeah, I think that's totally valid to be like, yep, we're going to separate that out. So this is a little bit more of a deep breath. Yeah,
and there's still, I mean, because any adaptation is dealing with the original text, you're never totally forgetting about it, and so there's always a level of pressure there. But yeah, I do find that pressure just lower with fill in the blanks adaptations. And it, so like to give as an illustration, like the two central figures of this second painting, like they're not like real book characters, right? I don't have to look at them and be like, well, is that quite right? You know, is that quite how I pictured that? Like, it doesn't matter. I never pictured these people. These are like hobbits I don't know, right? So the question is only, you know, can I accept these as hobbits, right? Do they seem to fit the Shire? That doesn't mean there's no pressure, but it's much lower than, you know. But of course, we do get the one character. We get Sam Gamgee here, and I love it.
But also like, and also just having that extra, it feels like an Easter egg to me. So like maybe it was more obvious to you that was Sam, but how on earth would I have known that was Sam just looking at this picture? And so to have that kind of extra layer of understanding, then you have that moment of nostalgia. The picture takes on such a different meaning, and yeah, there's many things I want to say about it visually, but we'll start with just that.
Yeah,
it's lovely.
Yeah, agreed. Well, okay, so let's go back. Let's go back to the first. Let's start with the first one. Okay. Oh, by the way, so this is the. Sorry, I'm just going fast. Okay, so this one I just wanted to. We're not going to look at this, but I just wanted to. This is an illustration. See, this is a depiction of a scene that's in the Hobbit. This is the scene when Bilbo gives the necklace to Thranduil at the end of The Hobbit. So Miriam does do scenes that are like, you know, depict a scene that's like straight from the book. And there's lots of interesting things about that too. But in the meantime, we're going to focus on the main thing we're going to focus on. Let's start with the Lobelia picture.
And I'm glad you mentioned it, but that's such a little tease of like, but now I want to.
I know. We could spend forever.
Okay,
but
so let's just say today we're just doing those two, but there may be a time in the future that we pick other ones, because just going through her website, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, there's and all the kind of like, did you notice, for instance, like the little detail that she tossed out about like how the little blue flowers embroidered in the hem of Lobelia's skirt are Lobelia flowers?
Flowers,
right?
Yeah.
Because she's named after a flower, of course, as a Hobbit lass, right? So. Yeah, yeah. Like it's really wonderful to, I mean, like not every painter is as, pays a close attention to detail as that, but like when you're painting one image, like you're invested in every speck of that image, right? You don't just toss stuff off. And so anyway, she does a wonderful job of being very thoughtful about even
Yeah.
really small details like that.
Well, and we were saying it with the storyboarding, like absolutely every little item in a film frame is very thought out. But I would argue this is even more so because you are committing, you know, brush to canvas and taking the time to choose the paint that's going into it. And there's so much more time and thought put into one single cell image that, of course, you're going to think about what's on her skirt and what would be on her skirt and how would that have been sewn in and how am I going to depict that and where's the light coming from and is it an old skirt or a new skirt? Like there's so many different factors that go into the detail of this.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Okay, so thinking of the image as a whole now, we were talking at the beginning about how you can get a sense of movement in painting, and I think that's one of the things that we get in right away from this.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, just looking at that, rule of thirds is pretty strong. We've got that wonderful line across the top moving us from lower left to upper right. And like we've said before, that left to right arch, the wind is blowing that way, the flowers are moving that way, the clouds are moving that way. There's beautiful movement in that.
Yeah, we get and what I like about the movement is how we get, on the one hand, we get the natural movement, which, as you say, is all left to right. And it's like upwards also because of the slope of the hill makes it look like it's not just going left to right, straight across, it's slanting up, amplifying that sense of like movement into the future and movement towards like better things as we've got the dark clouds up on the top right going away and the bright white clouds on the left coming in, right? And the sun is coming from the left as well.
Yeah, that bright sunlight was huge too, because that's coming from clearly top left. And when she was zooming in on all those little details, especially the bowing hobbit in the forefront,
Yep.
like the white of his cheeks, the white of his eyebrows, they were almost
Yes.
glowing from that sunlight.
Yes.
And like the white on those headbands of the two lady hobbits on the left.
Yeah.
Like they're just so iridescent that sunlight is so bright, it's almost oppressive.
Yeah. So we've got that but then there's another movement, which is the movement of Frodo and Lobelia out towards the viewer, right? Because it's the path coming out from the door, right? And Lobelia and Frodo walking on it, and you can see in the way that the hobbits are like the depth of field of the hobbits, they're not standing in a line, right? You've got the hobbits that are in the background, and you've got the hobbits in the foreground, and you've got Frodo and Lobelia right in the middle, processing outwards toward, they're in motion, right? The two of them are clearly in motion, not necessarily rapid motion, but they're in motion, right? So the way in which you've got the whole landscape showing the like big picture shift of, pointing to the big, like spiritual / political shift of the context of the Shire, right? The liberation of the Shire and the freedom of the entire landscape. And yet the movement of the characters are coming straight towards us, right? There's a way in which I am feeling myself as viewer engaged, especially with as I say, the depth of field of the hobbits. I mean, and also the way that the path curves. Like, I feel like I am standing, on this side of the path, right? The path is like just to my right. If I look down at my feet, the path would be at my right, and Frodo and Lobelia are headed in my direction, right? And it invites me into this procession of welcoming of them. And that's
kind of like the videographer at a wedding that's like watching the bride come
Yes.
out, right? Like you're holding the camera right here as they process towards you. But that's actually like a pretty good metaphor, right? Because that's what it is. We have this movement of like forward joy of, something new beginning. It's not a marriage, but it's akin to the same celebration.
Yeah, I mean, it's celebrating a moment, but it embraces everyone. Like, Lobelia is the very center of the picture, which is apt, and she's the one who's being celebrated, right? But this is a painting that's not just about doing celebration of Lobelia. This is like celebrating the celebrating of Lobelia, right? Which is why Frodo being not at the dead center, but right alongside center is also important, because his act of mercy, right? His act of compassion and tenderness towards Lobelia is also like there at the center. Like it's not, she's not standing alone at the center. It's her standing in Frodo's embrace. And I love how we can see both of his hands, right? His left hand holding her left hand, and his right hand just appearing around her shoulder, right? So he's both holding her, he's holding her up and he's holding her by the hand as well. Really again, showing the compassion with which he is supporting and embracing her. I love that the look down on her.
Yeah, that little look, and from Frodo to her, and her to the little hobbit presenting the flowers, like that line is just lovely.
Yes, and exactly. His eyes are looking down on her, but as you say, right through her to the hobbit lass as well. Again, showing how, and again, and similarly, the bread lady, right, who's holding out the loaf of bread, her hands are right there parallel with Frodo's hands, right? So just as his hand, his left hand is holding her left hand, Lobelia's left hand, the bread lady, like her hands are out right there under Frodo's left hand, showing that she also is offering support. And then you've got the descended hand of the bowing hobbit, right, showing respect. The kind of, and then the clapping hands, right, of the lady right up to to the top right behind the bowing hobbit. Anyway, I love how all of those things, come together.
And continue those lines, of the more I'm looking at it. Sometimes if you guys ever want to play with it, sometimes it's really fun to take like tracing paper over a magazine advert or a film frame or something like that to do some like construction. And you can do that with this. That if you just kind of like squint a little bit and you have the line of the hill, then follow the line of the two little hobbits down, follow the line of the stonework of the hobbit home, the doorway of the hobbit hole, the arch of the door, the open door over the shoulder of Frodo. Like those lines match up of the door to Frodo's shoulder down to the girl with the flowers.
Yes.
And then the cheering folks, you've got the rake to the fist, to the head, to the head, to the bread, to the umbrella. Like you have these wonderful lines that just help that movement that I keep going down, but I think you could also argue that they go up too. So yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah, and then things like the way that different, not only the shading and the light, but also the way that like different colors pick each other up, right? Like the blues and purples of the wildflowers that are both in the hands and on the head of the hobbit lass are very close to the blues and purples in her umbrella, right? Which is lovely. The umbrella, Lobelia's umbrella, is such a fascinating little symbol, right? Lobelia's umbrella is connected with her, the negative things about her at the beginning. She actually steals things in her umbrella in chapter 1 of the Fellowship of the Ring. Like when she leaves Bag End the morning after the party, Frodo is forced to relieve her of several small but rather valuable items that had somehow fallen inside her umbrella as she had walked around. So she actually uses that umbrella, the very same umbrella, to steal from Frodo/Bilbo, right, in Bag End. One gets the impression, though it's never explicitly said, that Lobelia is prepared at any point to hit you with the umbrella. Like we never actually see umbrella violence from Lobelia, like towards Frodo, right? But like, it's kind of like incipient, right? Like you get the sense, she brandishes her umbrella. Like you get the sense that she's ready to whack you with it if she really disapproves of you. But of course, the umbrella also becomes the turning point. It does become And the turning point is when she actually does use it for violence. But the violence that she uses it for is against the ruffians. She up and goes for him with her umbrella, we're told, when we get the account of Lobelia's arrest earlier. And that's why she's in the lockholes. That's why she's been imprisoned, is that she would not take, any guff off of those ruffians. And she at one point, up and goes for the leader of them with her umbrella. She is the one who she is, that's why she's a hero, right? Because she was unafraid of those who are coming in and oppressing the local populace and who stood up, against them and was not afraid. And they are celebrating this and her. But of course, the umbrella is also, as Miriam was pointing out, a class marker. Right. She carries around this fancy umbrella
Really fancy.
and / parasol thing. Right. Which is clearly very fancy and way fancier than anything else that is being worn. Right. Except the bowing guy's suit is fairly fancy. But
it does look quite not out of place because you can see how it is of these people. But it does not look commonplace. It very much does stand out. One, because it doesn't look as functional as most Hobbit things are. That wouldn't actually keep rain off of you. I feel like an
not
actual
very well.
Hobbit,
Yes.
yeah, an actual Hobbit umbrella would probably be I don't know, oilcloth or something much more hardy. This is delightful. This is a fair item,
Right. Right. Yes. And it stands out visually because of the color. There's almost nothing else in the painting that echoes that color except those wildflowers, right? The wildflowers that are being brought to her as this, this sort of token of joy, of celebration, of gratitude. She is decking her with flowers. The child is decking her, giving her this childish gift of flowers, but it's that childish, joyful, bright gift of flowers, which is echoed in her umbrella, which is her snobbish class marker and also the instrument of her rebellion, right? Against the ruffians. And that is so interesting.
And even with that color, you can still see a bit of an arc with that. If you follow the umbrella to the bouquet, to the crown, and then if you continue on, there's a few of those purple flowers in the grass
on the
there.
hillside. Yes.
Yeah.
You can see where the girl got them. Yes.
Yeah, a nice little rainbow of that color.
Yes. Yes.
Lovely.
Yeah. So I love the ways that you can pick these things up. I love it's a really interesting representation. Again, like we were talking about in a painting, you get one frame instead of millions of frames, right? So you have to kind of capture a whole story in one single image, which you're rarely pushed to do to the same extent in a film, right? You can always cut to something else in order to take the next step in the narrative. I love this as a depiction of, again, what we're told in the text is that there's this sense of her being greeted by crowds. There's this sense of her being popular. She had never been popular before, is one of the things that we're told about her in this moment. So there's this sense of widespread and broad base, and reaction to her, right? And so when we look at the depictions of the different characters, right? We can see a really interesting sort of array of people, right? There's the little girl with the wildflowers. There's the middle-aged woman with the bread, right? Who is clearly poorer than Lobelia, not of Lobelia's social class. The bowing guy with the suit with the ruffles at the neck is probably closer to her social class, right? And is bowing to her with a kind of respect that, very different from the dude with the rake in the background, right, holding the rake up above his head. The fact that there's a guy with a tool in his hand, like he clearly came like from the field. Like this is a person in the middle of working. Like he's not just a working class person. He was a person who interrupted his work in order to, when he heard that she was being let out or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, he stopped, and for a farmer to stop in the middle of the day to go, praise something that isn't going to affect his crop or harvest. Like, that's kind of a big deal. He stopped mid-action to go pay respects or celebrate with his community on this.
Yes. I like so anyway, just the way in which we get this kind of snapshot of Hobbit culture here, right, that touches on all these things. I'm interested in the fact that the younger woman on the left-hand side, on the far left, the figure on the furthest left, who looks like is probably the mom, maybe, of the girl with the wildflowers.
Oh, okay.
Mom, sister, somebody like that. Well, probably not actually, considering that the Hobbit girl and the woman on the right, who looks a little older, have almost the same color, right? They're tied together by color. That might more likely be her mom.
Yeah.
Other one might be older sister or something. But anyway, whoever the younger Hobbit woman is on the left-hand side there, look at the embroidery on the front of her dress. Like that's really fancy. Much fancier than, say, again, the plain brown shawl that the woman with the bread is wearing, right?
Yeah, it's not just the linen blouse. It looks very Frozen. It looks like Anna from Frozen.
Right.
It's very Scandinavian.
Yes. Yeah. It's much more elaborate. So again, we get this really interesting diversity. So like we're sort of capturing reactions from all, like, everyone in the Shire is unified, across different class lines, and we know that class is a thing in the Shire, a significant thing in the Shire based on its depiction. So yeah, classes, ages, thinking back again to the three youths that we get. Several younger people, a couple older people. It's a wide representation of Hobbit culture, but it doesn't just depict throngs, crowds. Each one of them is individual, and we only get, what do we get? 11 people besides Frodo and Lobelia. 13 total.
But that's actually quite powerful into itself, because if it was throngs, then it feels more like a parade. I don't know. Not that it would be less impactful, but the fact that there's 11, like each one of these people is making a real effort to be there.
Yes.
And just coming on Miriam said, yes, that's the auntie, and the other one is the mother.
Yes.
So we do actually have that familial relation there.
Yep.
That's lovely.
Yeah. I love Karen's comment that the Lobelia at the start of the story wouldn't have wanted wildflowers from a girl by the side of a path. But the Lobelia of the end looks genuinely moved to receive them. That, I think, might be one of my very favorite things in this entire picture, is that look of tender surprise on Lobelia's face as she's looking down at the girl. And again, that's capturing something. That's one of the pieces of very direct adaptation. We're told by the narrator, when this scene is alluded to, that Lobelia was surprised and didn't know how to handle it, because she had never been popular before. She's not used to people cheering for her. She's not used to be, she was an angry, embittered old woman who is used to, who expects and is accustomed to hostile reactions from people, and frankly elicits hostile reactions from people, and herself, and reflects she herself is very hostile. That's what we see from her, hostile and quick to take offense. And that difference of perspective, her being placed in this entirely new context, the way that her own life has been changed and transformed, and that kind of the way that Miriam in her analysis was talking about escape, right? And I loved the parallel with Frodo. Again, right near the very, very center of this image is the star, the even star, right? The Arwen star that Frodo is wearing, which represents his ticket to Tolerancia, his ability to find healing, right? His ability to escape the pain of Middle Earth and to find healing in Tolerancia. That object is near the very center of the entire thing.
Yeah, nearly dead center in this painting.
Yeah.
And also a nice little, not Easter egg, because I think we can infer pretty quickly that this is Frodo.
Yes.
But it's those things that help confirm that this is Frodo. So seeing the cloak, seeing the pin, seeing the star, those are all things that make us go, oh, and to see then how reverent he is to her.
Yes.
It just makes it fall that much stronger. It's lovely. I'd be curious if Miriam's happy to type a bit of how she feels about this moment and what emotion you kind of wanted to try to capture. I would be curious just to see. That is such a big moment, for all of us as viewers, when a character has a turning point, when there's a change of heart. Like, that is something I like to go back to. I do love those moments of redemption. I'm thinking, my first example was Guardians of the Galaxy. The second one, I can't remember his name, the bald guy with the mohawk that sacrifices himself to save Yondu. Thank you.
Yes.
Yondu
Yes.
to save Star-Lord.
Yes.
Him. Yeah, just those beautiful moments of redemption that are lovely. So being able to see it in such a soft, jubilant space.
Yes, it really is. It is one of the things that is so cool about adaptations like this. Just the opportunity to focus in on this one moment.
Yeah.
Which again, it gets like double digits of total words in the text. Like it's very, very briefly alluded to in the scene. In the book rather. And yet when you do focus in on it, like this adaptation brings us to do, right? You realize that like this one little moment, when you zoom in, this one little moment is this beautiful picture. It encapsulates so much of the larger themes of the text. And that's one of the ways in which it works so effectively as a fill in the blanks, right? She's filling in lots of details that are not described in the text. And she's, by doing that, bringing out things that are emphasized in the text. But even more importantly, she is touching on these really huge themes. Miriam was just talking about this moment being exemplary of the On Fairy Stories themes of recovery, escape, and consolation, and full of tenderness and mercy.
Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
And celebration.
And celebration. Yeah, yeah, and joy. Like not just what these things mean in the abstract, but what they mean to people.
And to see, and again, to see Frodo being so tender and caring for her when we know the hurt that he still carries and what he has gone through. So to see that kind of, I don't know, he looks calm, he looks peaceful and full of relief. So that transcends and it goes to her, and we then feel that as well, which is just lovely.
I love the height difference. I mean, Lobelia is, she's like a little old lady of a hobbit, right? So it's not surprising that he would be taller than she, but he gives that sense of strength, right? He's supporting her. He's taller than, so you have the taller, more physically robust one, holding on to and supporting the smaller and frailer one. And yet, as you say, but we know, because of the moment in this story, we know that Frodo is in pain. Frodo is suffering. Right. He has suffered hurts that will never be healed in Middle Earth. And yet it is that very suffering which has helped him to be able to have mercy and to have pity. And that's why he has this tenderness. Lobelia, we see him interacting with Lobelia, Frodo interacting with Lobelia earlier on at the end of chapter 1 of the Fellowship of the Ring, after the party, when she drives him to such extremes of frustration that he confesses to Gandalf that he longed to try on Bilbo's ring because he wants to disappear so badly. So he now, and yeah, and of course that conversation with Gandalf is framed by the fact that Gandalf knocks on the door and Frodo doesn't answer it. Like he ignores it because he thinks it's Lobelia.
Right.
Coming back and knocking on the door because she's thought of something even nastier to say to him, right? He says, she
He doesn't offer her tea.
Yeah, he doesn't offer her any tea, right? Yes, exactly.
The biggest insult of a hobbit can give.
Yes, it's true. That sentence is so pointed too. Frodo did not offer her any tea. Yes.
That just makes me think of the Jane Austen sentences we have describing
Yes.
these characters. It does not take much for us to understand exactly what is being said there.
Yes, exactly. Yes, and as Miriam is pointing out, Frodo at this point in the story is increasingly the glass filled with clear light for those to see who can, as Gandalf predicts. Absolutely. And Miriam, of course, what that means is he himself is like, he has suffered. He has, physically and spiritually bled, right? There's less of him left. And yet we see him giving himself, right? Giving of himself, showing mercy, giving strength to her here. His attitude that he would go personally to set her free from the Lockholes shows a kind of attention to her, which shows, I agree. So, I mean, I think that Miriam's reading of the text here, I think it's an excellent reading of the text. And it's super easy to miss in the text that Frodo Frodo going himself to set Lobelia free from the Lockholes. He didn't have to do that.
Right.
Like somebody else could have set her free from the Lockholes. But him going himself to set her free shows his own growth, his own freedom, his frustration, the whole relationship in both directions between Bilbo and Frodo and Lobelia and Otho, her now dead husband, and Lotho, of course, who's also now dead. Lotho Pimple is like that relationship that it's diseased from both sides. It's even more clear of Bilbo in chapter 1. Bilbo's like animus against the Sackville Bagginses, for which I can't blame him. I'm sure I would feel the same. But it's not a good sign. Like his desire to get away from everything is very understandable, but also not a good sign, actually. Right. One of the indications that we get in chapter 1 that things are not, even before the final revelation of things in the conversation with Gandalf and, Gandalf the Grey uncloaked and all of that stuff, right after the party. The issues he has with the Sackville Bagginses give warning that not all is perfectly well. This is how things should be, right?
Yeah.
This is that relationship healed. And so that feud was ended, says the narrator, very in a very low-key statement, right? Low-key of what that means, right? And how important that is.
But like you said, somebody else could have gone to release her. We don't know what Frodo was doing to fill every moment of his day at this time, but I would imagine most things would take a bit of an effort for him to do, So being able to have the clarity of mind to say, this is important, I do feel strongly about this, and then to take the action, that's really cool.
Yeah.
You can see the extra level of how that would hit.
Yeah. Miriam adds, she says, an aspect of the picture I might also mention is that I hope to explore how it might feel to leave our own Lockholes behind, to emerge into the light of new possibilities as Lobelia does. It's one of the things, Miriam, that I also love about the way in which, again, that forward, not just the left to right motion, but the outward motion, right, towards us. On the one hand, it does involve us, like we're one of the hobbits, celebrating. But it does really, really kind of engage us in that way as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it really puts us into that space.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing, it's one of the things that, again, is so beautiful about the celebrations as well. The celebrations, they're not just celebration. Lobelia didn't accomplish anything. Like her, from, if you look at it like pragmatically, her actions of like up and going after the ruffians leader with her umbrella accomplished nothing.
Right.
So she's not a hero in that sense. She's not a hero because of what she accomplished.
In terms of outcome.
Yes, in terms of outcomes.
But internal.
Yes, that's what's being like.
That was her pivot.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so
that's what he's recognizing. Like, you didn't save the Shire, but you made that leap.
Yes.
To be self-sacrificial, to do something to fight against the bad, and he's clocking that and showing that to everybody. Like, that's really great.
And it only comes to fulfillment. It only comes to fruition in this moment of celebration, right? Yeah. When she herself sees all of the other hobbits celebrating her, like, this is the moment when she comes out. Like, it isn't just that, like, I doubt that she has been a wholly changed person the whole time she's been in the Walkholes. Right. I bet she's been angry and bitter for a bunch of the time that she's been in the Walkholes. Right. But in this moment, this is the moment when this is her turning point. Right. This is the moment when she's really escaping. As Miriam said, kind of layering in the escaping of the Lockholes and the escaping of her old, even, all of like the anger and bitterness that she's been living in for decades. In fact, right? And she is, as Karen was pointing out, looking at this bouquet of wildflowers in the hands of a hobbit lass with totally different eyes than she would have looked at it before she went in.
And I would imagine that journey was a long arc. So, like, this is the pinnacle moment where she
corner.
turns that corner.
For sure.
But the minute Frodo showed up at her door, I bet it started. Or maybe even the minute she grabbed her umbrella and started fighting back, it started.
Right.
And then we had a little bit of a rocky, pits and falls while you're locked up and have too much time on your hands to think about everything. But there was this kind of gradual arc towards a changed heart, and we get to see that.
Yeah, and the response from the community is both celebrating the change, but also participating in the change, right? Like as Miriam was like the bread, right? Like, I am going to sacrificially give my bread to the prisoners. Even again, the dynamic which their clothing won't let us forget. This is a poor woman giving charity to a rich woman. Which is totally appropriate in this moment, right? Because things have been upside down, things have been reversed, and yet there isn't anyone here. There are many people here who might have said a year before, 2 years before, right? If they'd seen Lobelia Sackville Baggins walking by on the path with her, with her parasol, right? They might have muttered to themselves and thought like, well, she should get it would be like, I would love to see her get her comeuppance, right? I would love to see her, like, there's somebody who doesn't know what it's like to, to be in need.
Live in the real world.
Exactly. Right. Like, you can imagine many of these hobbit, these like peasant level hobbits, class-wise, who might have grumbled about Lobelia and who probably would have been, aggressively looked down on by Lobelia herself. But again, like, you could say, like, that is being healed as well. Frodo has been through suffering, and we see how he is responding. Lobelia has been through suffering, and we see how she's responding. The Shire has been through suffering, and we're seeing how it is responding as well. And all of that is all kind of wrapped up together in this one joyful, bright, celebratory moment as the sun sweeps across the hillside.
Lovely.
So good.
We like it, Miriam.
Yeah, we like it. Okay, let's look at.
And I mean, I'm saying that as you and me, like, obviously we like the painting. I think it's beautiful, but we don't say often on this show ever if we like something or don't like something, because we like doing analysis on things so much. Like, you can see how much fun that was.
Yes.
There's so much to look at and talk about here, and I feel like we're still only scraping the surface because you spent hours, days, weeks, months maybe working on these. And if you guys do look at her other works, I love that you said Jane Austen is one of your other favorite authors, because I saw those paintings on there as well. I was like, we have lots of interpretation opportunities here.
Yes.
To play with.
Yes. Yeah. Hey, we should talk to Miriam and ask for permission to use a Jane Austen image for like a cover image for
Ooh,
our
that's a great
Jane
idea. Because we
Austen
were
thing.
talking about what to do for our backgrounds for the recorded
Yeah,
elements.
yeah, it could be. Well,
I mean, obviously we record everything, but we're prepping for these like more formal recorded
yes,
sessions.
yeah, that
That
we
would
can
be
edit and such. Yeah. Oh, by the way,
cool.
I've happened across the detail of the Hobbit lass that I thought looked so much like Hazel, especially. I think it looked a little bit less like Hazel, really, really close up, but still, it's the hair. It's the
From
hair
here, it's the
and
same round
it's
face
the
and it's
round
the curly
face
hair,
and the
side
hair.
part.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've often been told that Hazel looks like a 1940s child, and I'm like, yeah, there it is.
I wanted to say, by the way, one of the things um, thinking about the lines that you were since I happened to have struck upon this scene,
Hmm.
the eye lines of the boy, right? The girl is looking down at Lobelia.
Mm.
The boy is the only hobbit who's not
Oh,
looking at Lobelia and Frodo. He's looking out. He's looking out and up
yeah.
towards the left, towards the sun, right? He's looking like into the future. Like,
And he's the highest one on
and
the
he's the highest
hillside.
one. Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. And I think that that's really interesting. And I would have thought it was interesting even before discovering that Hobbit boy and girl are the same ones that we see here in this painting decades
Mm.
later, now in the future, right? Um, but yeah,
Okay, now that one I don't have a picture of because it's not on her website yet that I can see, so I'm gonna have to wait for YouTube to catch up so I can see it on the screen.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Cool.
Miriam, looking at the future is exactly what I was seeing in
Oh,
that
nice.
boy there. Yeah, yeah. And now, of course, we see him as an adult looking down at the past. His eye lines are down now towards the stone, not straight down. His head isn't like tilted way down or anything, but you can see his eye lines are a little bit lower as they're looking at the stone. I love the visual parallel, like the visual echo between the three farthing stone off in the distance that she showed that
Hmm.
detail of, right? The three farthing stone, Maggie, just on the offhand chance that you don't remember a very fine detail like that, the three farthing stone is like basically it's a spot, it's pretty much in the middle of the Shire. It's like it
Yeah.
shows where like three of the farthings all come together, so it's
Hmm.
it is taken to be as near the center of the Shire as no matter, to quote the narrator giving Sam Gamgee's thoughts. So in other words, like that is the center, that is the heart of the Shire.
Yeah.
And the memorial stone, the memorial of the Battle of Bywater, it's, the two are they're not exactly the same, like they're not the same shape, but
Right.
they're both, sort of, they're similar shape, right? Wider at the bottom, tapering up towards the top. They're similar color. They're both kind of quasi obelisk-esque,
Standing
right?
on their own.
Standing on
Hmm.
their own, in the middle of like a green hill, right?
Hmm.
But yeah. So
They make me think of erratics in geology, like a little glacial
yes,
piece just
that
left
just
behind.
gets plopped there.
That's
Yeah, yeah,
totally separate from the rest of the landscape, so therefore it stands out that much more, but it's totally natural.
right. Um, yeah, and one of the things that I also find really interesting about this is that we can't see the actual memorial.
Right? Yeah,
Like
we're
we
seeing the
can't
other
see what's
side
on
of
the
it.
stone.
We can't see what they're looking at that they're
Yeah,
so emotional about.
yeah, yeah.
But what we can see is that ring of poppies around the base, which obviously, now we know the importance of that. But yeah, if you've seen the Remembrance Poppies or the poppy statue, it's a huge signifier of the Great War
Yes,
that Tolkien would have been very connected to. So just having that in our eye line, it feels like it's wrapped up in this little bow of sweet, solemn remembrance.
yes, yes, absolutely. And it's interesting because what is on the stone is like the one part of this whole picture that the book does say. Like we're told what's on the stone. So if she had depicted what was on the stone, she would be there rendering, like in a visual form, the thing that's described in the book. But she actually resists doing that
But
in this picture.
but she's not giving us
Yeah,
that. She's giving us the rest of the picture because we can read that part.
we can read that part. What she's focusing on, what this painting focuses on, is the impact of that on everything else, right?
Hmm.
Like we are, because again, if you think about where, again, our own point of view, we're behind the stone, right? So everything apart from the stone itself, everything else in the rest of the picture, I'm thinking like, again, sort of rule of thirds ish. Like the right hand third of the picture is all the stone, right? And then the left hand 2/3 of the painting is all facing the stone. The inscribed part of the stone that we can't see. And so we and the stone are facing the rest of that, and all of that is facing the stone, and therefore towards us as well. So our focus is not on the remembrance, it's on the rememberers, right? The people who are facing the memorial and doing the remembering.
Just now I'm looking at lines, guys. Oof. Like rule of thirds for sure. Like we can take a look at that. We've got that beautiful line of the horizon.
Yep. Look at the
We've got
sky.
the path and the red flowers
Yep.
cutting that bottom thirds. We've got it thirds that way. Thirds this way. We have the two trees kind of holding the line. We have the stone on the far right. We have them smack in the middle, kind of defining these three segments.
Yeah.
But then we have this beautiful cross section from the top of the mountains in the top left that goes around to the middle of the frame and then gets bigger as it comes towards us, kind of welcoming us
Right. And
into the frame.
like the sort of hedgerow that's coming
Yeah,
towards
the
us.
hedgerow is kind of creating like a triangle shape that takes up the whole bottom 2/3 of this. But it starts, taking up this much, and by the time you get to the bottom, it takes up the entire space. So it's such a cool framing of lines to draw your eye all to this one thing right smack in the middle. And it's not what's inscribed on the stone, it's the emotion hitting them.
Yeah. Yeah. Thinking of that, the horizon and all this stuff that we see. I mean, I was thinking also of the layers of distance that we get, right? We got the foreground with the stone and the flowers right around there, everything back to those two young cypress trees, right? Then we have like the middle ground of the field and the hedgerow in the background leading up to the hill up on the right-hand side, the wooded hill up on the right. And notice how you can just faintly see hobbit holes along the side of, in the side of that hill along those roads there. So this is that's like a town over there, right? That's like the equivalent of a hobbit skyline right there is what we're seeing. Basically, that's what a hobbit village from a distance looks like. And then we get the mountains, right? In the, like with almost no details on them, right? So we get just the like plain distant hills with the one higher mountain on the far left-hand side bouncing the near foreground or middle ground hill on the right-hand side. And then the sky and the clouds up above that. So we get these three people in the foreground, right? Then we get like a societal view, like the Hobbit, like the Shire itself, like broadly the Shire, the fields. We get tilled fields, it looks like on the left-hand side there in the middle ground, right? With that like different color field, right? Inside the inner hedgerow, like this one right in here, right? And then, with the hedgerow, so we get the fields and then we get the hill with woods, uncultivated woods on top of it. But then we get the people, right? The town, the Hobbit town, there. And then we get the distant lands that are outside the Shire, right? The distant mountain over there, and then the sky. So we get all of these different, like and again, all of that is being sort of faced by the memorial, right? The memorial is kind of remembering all of these things and having an impact. The thing being memorialized has had its impact on all of these. Nothing here would be the same as it is if it weren't for, what happened here that is being memorialized, if it weren't for the Battle of Bywater. I think that is really fun.
I also love the perspective that we have again, similar to the last one. We are like holding the camera, taking a look back at the scene. And the sun in this one, I mean, yes, we have the shadows, so we can see exactly where the sun is, but it must be so high in the sky because everything is just glowing from on high. So it doesn't feel like a sunset or a sunrise. It just feels like bright spotlight onto this moment, and for us to be at a space behind the stone watching it all happen with a spotlight, that feels very important too.
Yeah absolutely.
And that ring across the bottom, you can just see that. I want to say smile, but I don't think this is something we would beam, we would grin at. But it just looks like the shape of a smile coming across the bottom that kind of holds our perspective with Sam at one side and the stone at the other.
Yeah, it is a little half ring there at the bottom. Yes, yes. The two hobbits in the middle, both in blue, right? Their colors matching, sort of suggesting a sort of a unity between the two of them being tied together. The one of the things that I like to look at when I'm looking at a painting, like I was noticing with the wildflowers and the umbrella before, I love to see like color patterns, where colors. That's why, Miriam, the poppies were the very first thing I noticed on this picture because of the red, right? Like it's the red, well, pops so much in this painting that, you know, as soon as when I first glanced at this picture, I was like, red, poppies, World War One. Like it was just like, it was like my very, very first impression of the, like that and the immediate association. And I think, by the way, it is that because we don't see the inscription, we don't, in fact, like this painting does not tell us there is writing on the front of the,
Right.
like we have no evidence. If all we had was this image, you showed this image to somebody on the street, they wouldn't necessarily know that there was writing on the front of that stone. But I immediately knew there was writing on the front of that stone. I could immediately tell where we were, that this must be because of the poppies and their association with war remembrance. And so that would have immediately suggested to me what stone it is that they were looking at. It might still have taken me a little while to guess because it's so unusual to see a depiction of something that's several decades after the narrative finishes in The Lord of the Rings. Like that, I might have been trying to find it within the narrative more narrowly. So I might not have guessed. I'm not trying to say I totally would have guessed. But I would have had a pretty good sense of it from that.
And I mean, I wouldn't have because I, again, don't know the text as well as all of you, but like you would know that this is after because there's no threat. You know, just looking at it,
The
you would know this
peacefulness,
is
yeah.
after the peacefulness, the sunshine, the lush, verdant fields. Like this is an area that has had time to pay attention to the way their yards look, you know, like
Right.
things like that.
Right.
So you have this kind of optimism, but the like solemnity of the two of them and the poppies and staring at a very large stone. Living in the UK, you kind of have a predisposed understanding of what that is because every town has a memorial with the listing of the names that were lost in the Great War.
Yes.
And then the list of the names that were lost in the Second World War. The list of the names for the Second World War is like 10% what it was in the First World War on every single memorial. So just like the impact of these is just so intense.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, there's even one in my yoga hall that just has like the names, but it also has pictures of the men before that their families had donated. This still resonates. We're 100 years after, and I'm looking at a little boy whose dad never came home. He's holding
Right.
his hand outside of a stone house in a little valley in Wales. Like these are still part of our everyday lives.
Yes.
So seeing red poppies in a painting like this just immediately takes you
Yeah.
back to that. So it doesn't matter how bright this is. I can tell that there's something solemn here, which is, yeah, a big deal.
Yeah, and their expressions really capture that as they are looking at, you know, the solemnity and emotion with which they're looking at the stone.
And Sam for his care for it.
Yeah. Well, and that is truly, that's the Easter egg of this painting, right? The Easter egg of this painting. And this is something which, like, it's something that you could guess if we weren't told. Like, I think it is possible to guess who the elderly hobbit is who is tending the garden here. But it's not automatic. Like, you wouldn't necessarily know. Especially since Sam, at this time, is still almost certainly mayor of the Shire.
Mm.
Like
Oh, good shout. Yeah.
he's the mayor. So he will have been at this time. He's not just the mayor. He would have been, Miriam, what did you say? 40 years after the end. So he's probably serving what, his fourth or fifth term as mayor at this point. He served 7-year terms. He served for 49 years as mayor of the Shire. After. But not right away. Like Will Woodfoot was restored as mayor for 7 years. So, Sam's not going to stop being mayor of the Shire for, a full, 56 years after the end of the Return of the King. So this is Sam the mayor of the Shire, one of the most important, political figures in the entire Shire. And he is dressed very plainly, right? His clothes are almost not marked at all, right? Like he's not wearing anything fancy. There's no indication of rank or anything. And there's nothing external that would lead you to guess that was a really important person standing there. He just looks like any gardener might look. One of the things I love, Miriam, and this is again, like one of the things I love about looking at like colors and color connections in paintings. I love how the light on Sam's pants is exactly the same color as the light on the cypress trees. Like, him and the trees that he planted are almost like the two of them are growing along together, right? Like they look exactly. I love that.
But I also like that
connection.
the two cypress trees are quite straight, and Sam is old here and a
And
gardener.
bent over,
He's
yes.
he's a bit
Yeah.
bent over and bowed. Yeah.
Right. More about Sam's pants. If you look at Sam's right leg, the one on the left-hand side, the blue of it is almost the same as the blue of their clothes, right?
Yeah, there's a nice tie there.
But where the sun is hitting his leg, it looks exactly like the trees. So he is the bridge, right, between the hobbits and the trees, right? That's what he's doing.
Well, I do like the subtlety of it, especially after the last painting, that we're looking so closely at everybody's outfits, and we know that Miriam has put this much thought into the outfits, that he's not wearing green velvet with a lacy cravat.
Yes.
He's not wearing an overly embroidered anything. It's just a normal tunic, normal trousers. He's just doing some work.
Yeah, yeah. The way that this captures the humility of Sam as mayor. And then of course, like when you realize not only that Sam is here humbly gardening, tending the path and the flowers around the memorial stone. Like again, it doesn't just reflect his own personal humility, but that Sam doesn't live here. This isn't Sam's backyard. This isn't Sam's garden, right? That Sam travels to the Stone of Remembrance, not just to stand like these hobbits are and look at the stone, but to tend it, right? To make sure he is there facilitating the visits of all of these other hobbits, right? To help to make sure that all of the hobbits remember. It is, yeah, exactly. As Madman said, Sam here is the Mr. Gamgee of Bag End, in fact. Yes. Or Mr. Gardner. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, and tending is just the best word, because it is very tender, but he's looking after it. It's his duty, and not just as mayor, not just as a gardener, just as a hobbit. It's just something he feels that it is his duty. You can see that. That's very sweet.
Yeah. And of course, lying behind it, it's difficult not to think of this is Sam decades after Frodo's departure,
Right.
as well. And there's that element of remembrance involved here also.
Of
right?
carrying on.
Yes, of carrying on, and of making sure that nobody forgets, because he remembers, right? He remembers Frodo's sacrifice. Frodo's not on the stone because he didn't die in the Battle of Bywater, but Frodo's own sacrifice. one is tempted to say the sacrifice, the hobbits whose lives were sacrificed, who sacrificed their lives at the Battle of Bywater, are like an image, like a picture of the sacrifice that Frodo made as well. They're associated together, and one could imagine Sam feeling like tending this memorial is like keeping the memory of Frodo alive as well.
Yeah.
And helping people to remember that. And these two hobbits whose I love their age. They're old enough to potentially remember, right? To have been personally impacted, like, especially, of course, as we learned, they're the two kids on top of the hill, right? So they were in fact around, they were there when these events happened. It happened in their lifetime. And yet they're old enough now to be able to reflect on this. Like, we have had our whole lives, we have built these lives, because of this sacrifice, in the shadow of this memorial. It's a beautiful, and then of course, then with like being picked up, you've got the whole, I think, thinking of lines and curves again. Look at the sort of the line from Sam's old bowed head, and then their two heads up to the top of the rock. Right. So you've got this sort of connection between the stone, which stands tallest of all, and then the two hobbits with their two heads, slanted down towards, the gardener, Sam the gardener's head, bowing over.
And I'm going to wrap us up in a minute, Pierre.
Yeah, I got to go too.
But I also like this whole conversation that you've had, because it just speaks to the bigger picture of art like this, I think, too, because we're being shown the single moment, and yes, it should only be for the mourners of the Bywater losses. But no, it's for anyone who has ever lost.
Yes.
Just by viewing this picture, you're able to kind of garner all that emotion, all those feelings, be able to infer what the characters of each of those three are thinking, but also I started thinking about my village, like we started talking about bigger items, like that's really powerful. So to be able to infer that, and we haven't even seen the stone. Like, I am curious if Miriam has a visual of what she thinks the front looks like.
Right.
But I kind of like that we don't need to see that, because we all understand what's happening here.
It is such a fascinating choice that she made just in the framing of this picture. That is that really makes it so mysterious and powerful.
So Miriam, I hope you want to do this again, because this is fun.
This has been great fun. Yeah. So anyway, so as I say, Maggie, I have longed to just sit down with some paintings and look at visual art like this.
This really does feel like scratching the surface. And I know we say that a lot, but like, this could be a really cool arc for us to go off on as well. Like, when we need a little breather from Jane Austen, let's take one of Miriam's paintings, or one of Alan Lee's, or Alan Howe, John Howe,
Alan Lee. Yeah, there we go. Yeah,
they all got in my head. Any of those guys, and start to do some of this, and it's just fascinating to start to play around with. Miriam's comment, just to mention, I've devoted 25 to a deep study of Hobbit culture, preparatory for my hoped-for second book. Yes, please.
Right.
Cool.
She says her second book will be a very good Hobbit walking party through history, shire, and culture. Nice. Yeah. Awesome.
We're here for it.
Yeah. No, that's going to be great. So Miriam, thank you for the work that you do. This is so beautiful.
And for creating this video, like the analysis leading us into it.
Yeah.
And I would be curious if you were rolling your eyes at any point at our analysis, being like, guys, that's not what I meant. Just
So yeah, no, it's very interesting. So anyway, so thank you, Miriam. Thank you for your work. Thank you for sharing your work with us. We look forward to getting a chance to discuss this with you again, and we'll see. Maybe we can bring it into Jane Austen. We'll talk about that too. In the meantime, thanks everybody for joining us, and we will see you. We'll be back again. We're planning to come back again next week for Jane Austen. So,
yeah.
All right. Very good, everybody. Bye now.
Bye.